This movie fucking sucks. It's such a piece of shit. It's the worst film in the franchise. Terminator is fucking screwed. Because of Terminator Genisys, leaving a piss and sucking loads of shits. Sucking loads of shits and sucking loads of shits. Anyway, that little musical rendition definitely does sum up nicely how I feel about Terminator Genisys, the fifth film in the Terminator franchise. And unlike Fast 5 or even Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, the fifth time is not the charm. Terminator Genisys was a film that I wasn't looking forward to begin with. The trailers I thought looked pretty bad, looked like a really low budget looking half-assed production. And that's ultimately what the film pretty much was. I went into it with super low expectations, expecting hopefully maybe to get any sort of shred of entertainment out of it, and what I was left with just a load of shit and piss in my hands. It was a very, very, very lackluster and very lackluster film, and if one word could sum it up nicely, it would be pathetic. I thought the film was just pathetic. It was a very pathetic Terminator movie. It was a pathetic sequel, and it was a pathetic excuse for a Terminator film. It was a disgrace to me to the name Terminator. It took away the balls that the franchise had. It ended up just making a very pathetic, lackluster, boring, really, really shitty movie. And finally in the franchise, you finally have the first truly, really awful film, at least for me. I thought Terminator Salvation was actually much better than this was. And I definitely had, I don't know, it actually had actors, so I think that helped the film immensely. And Alan Taylor's direction in this was very flat, uninspired. He had no pulse. He felt like he was going through the motions. And McGee, at least, I know McCheeseburger normally isn't a very good director, but with Salvation, he at least knew how to direct action sequences and give them a little bit of adrenaline. There was none of that here. The action sequences in Terminator Genisys, except for a few near the end, had all the impact of a punch from a 12-year-old girl. It was very, very wimpy. It was a wimpy looking and a wimpy feeling Terminator film. Anyway, now we got that initial sort of burst of, a little bit of ire towards the film out there. I just thought I thought it would be a good idea to talk about the pros. At least get the good stuff that I liked about the film out there first before I start listing off the laundry list of just an epic amount of issues I personally have with this film. Anyway, as when it comes to some good that this film has, some pros, I thought Arnold's performance was actually pretty good. I thought it was surprisingly good. His performance as Pops, this older Terminator, was actually a better performance than he did as the Terminator in T3. And honestly, it was the best performance acting-wise, other than from J.K. Simmons, who I also liked his performance in this film. Here's another thing that I thought was actually good about this movie, was a good pro, was J.K. Simmons, but he's barely in the film. He should have been in the film more and had more to do, but he didn't really have that much to do in the film at all, really. He didn't show up in the movie until like 56 minutes in. But Arnold Schwarzenegger as Pops, this older Terminator, his performance is actually, I thought, was really good. I thought it reminded me of what the Terminators should be, what the type of Terminator performance he should have had in T3. And it's crazy, but his performance as a cyborg was better than the two leads in the film. It was insane. Like, he had more charisma as the Terminator than Jai Courtney had as Kyle Reese, who's supposed to be a human being. So it was really, really surprising in that regard. But even though I liked his performance, it still wasn't without its issues. But a lot of those problems, like the stupid smiling, looking like a fucking goober, looking like a dumbass, which didn't work in T2. That's why that was deleted. There's some silly shit. And they repeat it like 3 times. Like it was so good the first time, but it's really awful. That's not really anything to do with his performance. That's just what he's asked to do because of the bad screenplay, the bad story. Him falling out of a helicopter, uh, jumping out, falling like a torpedo to see if he could fall faster than his own career. It's pretty much the script is to blame for that. I don't really blame Arnold for that, unless he chose to fall out of the fucking airplane, out of a helicopter, not an airplane, my bad, a helicopter like a fucking torpedo or a missile, a guided missile, locked on target, end of career, target acquired, impact immediate. But I don't know who if that was his choice. I don't think it was. It's just probably the screenplay that people who wrote it chose that. Latia Kalgoridis and Patrick Lessier. So I don't know which one wrote that, but either way, it was pretty bad. And the whole dumb lines of dialogue, like "bite me" and just yeah, just Arnold's performance was one of the good things about the movie. And he honestly had some pretty cool things to do near the end of the film, and he had some cool stuff where he gets upgraded with the liquid metal with the T1000. But it's also a con and a problem because that happens like literally almost at the end of the fucking movie. So there's really not much. It didn't do anything with it, which is really sad. So anyway, even though Arnold was good, I thought he was a pretty good performance by him. A lot better than T3. It wasn't as awkward. He still did some stupid shit, some bad things, but that he did what he was asked to do. I thought he was better than acting wise and pretty much anyone else in the film other than J.K. Simmons. And other than those 2 performances, the only other pros I can come up with, things I liked about the movie, were some of the little bits of action near the end at the Genisys compound, where Arnold as Pops is fighting Terminator John Connor. I didn't mind some of the stuff the fight, a little bit of the fight there. I like the idea of the brass knuckles, pretty much with the R's brass knuckles, but for Terminators. I like that concept. I thought it was well executed. Good bit of fisticuffs between Arnold, Pops, and Terminator John Connor. I like how Terminator John Connor was able to like phase in and out and attack Pops. I like the scene where Arnold throws a spear into John Connor. It was actually pretty badass. It was one of the most badass moments that Pops had in the film. Throws the spear into John Connor, and he's just like, John Connor talks too much. That was actually pretty cool. I got a chuckle out of that. It was actually a good sequence, I thought. And then you had just a little bit of the action in the climax, and I like a little bit. I like a little bit of the sequence in the chemical plant. I think it was a chemical plant or chemical compound of some sort with the acid and stuff like that. I like the little scene with the T-800 was brought back to life by the other T-1000 played by Byron, I think it's Byron Huang Lee Byung-hun. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly, but that's the guy from he was Storm Shadow in G.I. Joe. And he gives a little bit of liquid metal to the T-800 from the first movie, brings it back to life. I didn't mind a little bit of action when it's chasing after John Connor and not John Connor, sorry, I got mixed up. Kyle Reese in that sequence. The reason why I got mixed up because it's not Kyle Reese, but that's another story. Wait till I get to the cons and the things I found wrong with this film first before I want to stay on track. So I didn't mind that little bit of that sequence, and I didn't mind the first little glimpses of the 1984 Arnold Terminator. The CGI was actually surprisingly really good, but it was only really good in up-close shots, and when you just saw him walk for a couple of steps, because then when it started running, it looked really goofy and wonky looking. But I didn't. I actually was pretty impressed with the first little few shots of it. But other than that, and maybe a little bit of the story with the Genesis, the fact that it's a program that's going to connect everyone to their car, to their computer, to their phones. It felt like something that was very current. Felt like something that could honestly happen in the future. So I didn't mind that little bit of the story, but they didn't do much with it and didn't introduce it until about an hour into the movie. So, and it's kind of been done before in some other films before, so it's not anything that's completely 100% original, but it was more interesting than a lot of the other stuff that was going on in the plot, which to me felt like a bad fan fiction. It just really felt like that, like a really bad Terminator fanfic that was given a huge budget and was made into a movie. And it wasn't a fan film on YouTube. But the film still at points looked like a fan film on YouTube, which is really pathetic. Anyway, those are the few pros that I listed. Now I'm getting the cons, which there's a ton of them. And right off the bat, I want to mention the two huge glaring flaws that I personally feel that this film has that bring it to its knees, that cripple Terminator Genisys, and that is its story and its characters. Its story, like was mentioned earlier, it feels like a bad fan fiction. It's just every bit as insulting to me as that shitty Terminator versus RoboCop Kill Human comic, where RoboCop goes in and like lets John Connor get decapitated by the T-1000 and basically lets them drown in acid with the T-800, and then RoboCop also drowns in the same aircraft carrier, and drowns with them. I mean, honestly, that's worse, but this is pretty close. It's not as fucking bad as Terminator RoboCop Kill Human, but it's still pretty bad regardless. I've read better books that dealt with the Terminator franchise that were these spin-offs of T2, like T2 Infiltrator or something like that. I've read books like that were much better than the story that was shown in this film. I've seen fan films that were better. I've seen fan films that looked as good as this movie did at points. It's another huge problem I have with the film is how cheap it looks at a lot of moments in the film. And just the story is just a really bad fanfic. This whole idea of the timeline has changed, so that means that the Terminator and T2 don't technically exist anymore because of the timeline change, which is basically a slap in the dick in the face to fans of the franchise. Then you have the whole way that they treat the 1984 sequences. I thought just very slipshod and very lame. I mean, you see the T-800, the Terminator from the first film, which was a badass, and took multiple shots to bring down, and it gets brought down in one fucking shot by Sarah Connor, who I don't like to call her Sarah Connor because she might as well be fucking Hannah Montana, because she looks like she's fucking 12. She's really young. She looks like Brooke Shields from the Blue Lagoon. Don't buy her as a badass, and I don't buy her shooting that big ass gun. The recoil would have sent her flying back 50 feet. But anyway, she somehow fires this big ass fucking sniper rifle, which kills the T-800 in one shot, and then Arnold as Pops goes, thumbs up, and I'm like, no. Thumbs down! Stick the thumb up your ass! Because it's just really insulting, in my opinion, to the first film. It's just like, oh, fuck the Terminator. It's a fucking little baby toy. We took it out in like 2 seconds. And then they bring it back again, and then it gets fucking dispatched just as easily. But I didn't mind a little bit of the stalk and chase moment between the Terminator T-800 and Kyle, but it didn't last very long. I said I didn't mind a little bit of it, but it didn't really make much of a difference when it comes to the film's overall quality, because the Terminator T-800 still got taken out way too easily for my personal tastes. And then the last shot of it is just melting in some acid, basically in what looks like a mop bucket. So that's the first Terminator, just fucking wasted, pissed on, treated like a bitch, and it just the film has a hard time recovering from moments like that. too many callbacks to the first and second films. The sequence in the department store where Kyle Reese, not Kyle Reese, is going around and he's trying to get away from the cops, but this time it's the guy Storm Shadow as a T-1000, but it's still the same shot. The punks from the first movie who don't look right. And there's something really wrong about the costume design for these punks. They're supposed to look like the punks from Terminator, but they look off, and the order of them, like when they're in a row, it's all wrong. I think it was completely different in the Terminator. They fucked it up. So and Elvis and the 1984 just looked bad to me. It didn't look like. It just looked like they just tried to make it look like film, but they still had HD camera work, so they just used filters and shit, and just didn't really work. And so you have the problem with the story with the whole stuff with the different timelines of 1984, basically erasing the first two films, inserting a new shitty timeline. It's like the fucking future, the alternate future, Back to the Future 2. It's like that hellish of a vision to me personally. And so you have that sort of stuff, alternate timeline happening. John Connor's the Terminator, which wasn't a surprise because the trailer gave it away. But that's not really anything I could really criticize, really honestly, because a lot of trailers back in the day did the same thing. But they were good movies, so I didn't give a shit. Here, this movie sucked a lot of dick. It sucked cold, hard, robot steel dick. And so I did not really... that bothered me more, that they gave away the twist. But either way, it didn't matter because it's a bad idea. Yes, it's never been done before, John Connor as a Terminator, but it's a bad idea. That's why it was never done before, because it's a bad idea. Because it's just like, hey, fans of the first film, fuck you. John Connor's a fucking villain now. Great. Lovely. I really enjoy that. It's fantastic. And so they erase the first two films, or put them in an alternate universe, and they have this fucking shit, John Connor's the Terminator, and then you have these moments in the film where they just turn the Terminator and the whole franchise into a very piss-poor, pathetic, neutered version of the franchise, where it just takes away all the intensity, all of the impact of the first two films, and just ends up just making it like it's suitable for all ages. I mean, you have Pops. Terminator calls himself Pops, and ends up adopting a little girl, and then you have scenes where instead of Guns N' Roses, it's a shotgun and a fucking teddy bear. I'm not making this shit up. Terminator's walking around. Arnold Schwarzenegger's a Terminator. He walks around with a fucking teddy bear, and that's supposed to be the badass thing. He blows a hole through the teddy bear, and I'm like, it was badass with the Guns N' Roses in T2 because there's a reference to the band Guns N' Roses, which that band is badass. Teddy bear is just fucking pathetic. It's really lame. And so you have that, and then it's not only that, the action sequences are very tame and lame and just really neutered. They don't have any intensity. They don't have any adrenaline. And a big part of it, is because the characters are so poorly written and the story is so bad that I don't really care what happens. So that is another huge problem. That's one of those two things combined end up destroying this movie for me, because you have a story I don't care for, that I don't like, that's inconsistent, and what I mean by inconsistent, there's some really stupid shit in the film where in 1984 Terminator Arnold, Pops, he creates a time machine out of fucking a chicken wing and bubble gum and a bunch of fucking spare parts. But in the future, in 2017, all-powerful John Connor Terminator, along with his accomplice and the son of Miles Dyson, they can't create the time machine. They can't do it. which I'm like, that's a bunch of bullshit. That's stupid. Why can't an older model Terminator figure it out and MacGyver the fucking shit and create a fucking time machine out of just a fucking fishing wire and a bunch of fucking hubcaps? This is what it looks like. And the new Terminator can't fucking do the same thing. That's what I'm talking about. That has nothing to do with time travel either. There's nothing to do with the paradox sort of elements of the screenplay that kind of end up being some time travel bullshit that kind of unravels some certain moments. Like, how is Kyle Reese there? Shouldn't he's how that kind of stuff? Or how the fuck does he have the photo of Sarah Connor? Because it burned up to a crisp in the Terminator. Which makes me think the people who wrote this didn't watch the Terminator. But anyway, that's a little thing, but it's still stuff you notice. And so, but the time travel stuff doesn't bother me as much as the stupid shit like the Terminator John Connor can't fucking build the time machine in 2017. But Pops can build it in 1984. That's kind of shit I'm talking about. So, the story, it's like a bad fan fiction. It's like every shitty part of the Resident Evil films, and now it's a part of the Terminator franchise. You picked a really bad model to go off of with a new franchise, Genisys, because he decided, oh, fuck it. Hey, look at the Resident Evil movies. They're popular. Let's borrow that concept. And because even the Genisys construct is pretty much the Red Queen, so it's just a fucking really shitty. It's just as shitty as the shitty Resident Evil movies. So we don't need more of those in the first place. And I sure as hell didn't want to see that become a part of the Terminator franchise. So the story sucks. That's a huge problem for me. And then you have the characters, Kyle Reese and Sarah Connor, who I don't fucking buy these two actors as these characters. So I don't buy it. I don't buy into these characters because I don't buy these actors as these characters. Because I don't care. You can feel however you want to feel and whatever. But to me personally, Kyle Reese is Michael Biehn. Sarah Connor is Lyndall Hamilton. I can deal with someone like Lena Headey because she actually believably could kick some ass. Emilia Clarke, on the other hand, looks like she hasn't even gone through puberty yet, and she looks like she should be at a sleepover with her girlfriends on a Saturday night instead of fucking holding a shotgun and being a badass. When she looks like she's a preteen, that does not help. She even acts like a preteen. Her performance is like a preteen. She looks like a fucking preteen. It's just like, I don't buy it. I don't fucking buy this character. And Jai Courtney, who looks like he's fucking stoned throughout the whole movie, needs to fucking, I don't know, lay off the doobies and fucking pay attention or fucking grow a personality because it's not there. To me, he was like a lesser man's Christian Slater combined with Channing Tatum. And he is just not a good actor, period. There are sequences in the film where his acting was just about as bad as The Room. I'm serious. As bad as that. The guy from The Room, the Tommy Wiseau, it was just as bad as Tommy Wiseau. Like one line we were talking about, Sarah, we need to, it was like, my God, it's just as bad as Tommy Wiseau. It's like, I did not do it. I did not hit her. Terminator, tearing me apart, Terminator Genisys. Ah! So really, that's what I'm just like, this Tommy was so bad. It's so awful. And so you have that, and so these are your two leads, and they suck. They are so bad. They have no chemistry. They have zero chemistry, and their performances are just flat and insipid and just uninspired, and it's just straight up awful. So I thought the performances were really bad, and the characters weren't well written either. And if they were, it was just a shit ton of dialogue and not much else. And since the acting, you don't buy these characters, and the performances suck, then the lines of dialogue don't have a lot going for them either, because the characters suck. So to be honest, even if the film had good characters, and the characters were better written, the film would still be pretty bad, because the two actors it chose can't fucking act. So there's a huge problem with it. I haven't seen Game of Thrones. I don't plan to, but Emilia Clarke is just miscast and does not pull off this role as Sarah Connor. She just does not do it. She just doesn't cut it for me, and it's very awkward and stilted, and her line delivery just sort of screams of Mila Kunis. So half the time I'm like, shut the fuck up, Meg, and go away. And then Jai Courtney is like even worse than Sam Worthington. So I'm like, grow a fucking personality or wake the fuck up. So I'm just left with these two characters who I just don't give a shit about. And that's your two leads. So that also severely hampers the action sequences, because there's no thrills to be found, and there's no adrenaline, and there's no suspense, because I don't give a shit about these characters, and I don't care what happens to them. So those two things combined create what ultimately to me are the crippling flaws in Terminator Genisys. And then you have the other problems. Effects that look asylum bad at moments. And then you have, of course, really lackluster action sequences. You have the battle of Skynet in the first half of the film, and it just is blink and you miss it. I've waited to see that for multiple films, and here you see it, and it's just very uneventful. It's just a fucking limp dick in your hands, and it's just lame. It's blink and you miss it. It happens in like 30 seconds, it feels like it. There's no impact, and it's before you know it, it's already over. That was really, really aggravating to me. So right off the bat, it aggravates me. And then you have other aggravating stuff, like Arnold gets an upgrade, but it's at the end of the movie, and he should have had the T-1000 upgrade from the beginning, because then it would have been something unique, instead of him just throwing people through walls and buildings again. He did that in T3. It's just the same shit, different movie. And then there are even certain shots that, like the whole thing with the air container, with the air compressor, like with the oxygen container, reminded me of freaking Freddy vs. Jason. Ever seen a scene where he's throwing Terminator John Connor through these like electrical towers? Also reminded me of Freddy vs. Jason, where Freddy's throwing Jason through the house, through the bunch of the building, through the walls of the house. And that movie's better. That movie has its problems too, but it's a better movie than this. So I would much rather watch Freddy vs. Jason than Terminator Genisys. So you had these inconsistent effects where some of them look good and sometimes it look really, really shitty. Like the fire effects on the explosions look really bad. The lasers on the laser guns for the endos and for the soldiers in the future war looked really awful to me. And for some reason, Alan Taylor decided to put this fucking blue and orange the whole fucking filtering again, blue and orange and gray all over the fucking movie. And then for some reason decided to put a fucking filter on the sequences with endos in the future, and which made their laser blast look pink. And then that wasn't just it. The laser blast from the soldiers looked purple, so it was like pink and purple fucking laser blast, like it's fucking, I don't know, Power Rangers or some shit. And then you have this, for some reason, the way that he shot the film or the way the filters are makes any shot with red light look like it's pink. So you got pink fucking you, and it just really made the film look bad to me. And then the way that it was filtered and the way that the endos were shot, they looked fake as fuck. They looked very stiff, and the fakest they've ever looked in the entire franchise. And they didn't look badass at all or imposing at all. And then you have the director, Alan Taylor, who I don't think he knows how to shoot makeup effects, because he shoots every scene with John Connor with the scars on his face in harsh lighting, so you can tell it's a latex effect, and it looks really bad. So And that's another problem with the film. The directing by Alan Taylor was just going through the motions, not much to it, but he did a better job with Thor Dark World because there's more of this element there, because that's a fantasy film. That's more like what he did with Game of Thrones. Here it's a sci-fi action movie with certain sequences that are set in modern day or in real life, and he just can't do it. It just does not look right. He doesn't look like he knows what he's doing half the time. It's just a very pretty bad directing job. It just lackadaisical, lazy, half-assed, do it for the paycheck directing job. There's no passion behind this directing. Cinematography isn't much either because it's really not much to look at. The score by Hans Zimmer is very forgettable. And at points it sounds like he just cribbed some music from some other movies he already composed soundtracks for, or just cribbed some music from a trailer. It just sounds like he just cribbed some music from some of those trailer music and just threw it in there. One of the most forgettable scores I've heard Hans Zimmer compose in a long time. It's hard to even hear or even honestly even know it's there half the time. And when you see it's Hans Zimmer, you're like, really? Hans Zimmer? Well, I know he could do better than this, but he probably didn't have much to work with. He probably saw the film and just like, I don't have anything to work with here. And so you have bad score, bad story, bad script, bad directing, bad decision making. What do I mean by bad decision making? Hey, let's ruin one of my favorite quotes of all time. Well, Kyle Reese is in the first film was talking to Sarah and Linda Hamilton. The Terminator is out there, and it will not show pity or remorse, or fear or pain, and it absolutely will not stop ever until you are dead. Here, it just copies it and has fucking Jason Clarke deliver it in the most really lazy, hammy way imaginable and just ruin it. The Terminator I will never not stop ever. I do not feel pity, remorse, or fear. I do not feel fear, pity, or remorse. And I absolutely will not stop ever until Skynet is back online or some shit. I'm like, oh, that's just fucking great. That's absolutely fan-fucking-tastic. One of my favorite quotes of all time, and you fucking butcher it with some William Shatner fucking acting. I'm talking William Shatner like on a fucking bender acting. Jason Clarke was better as the bad guy in White House Down than he is here. So yeah, you had to do that. You had to make the Terminator kind of even more of a pussy than he was getting close to being. Fucking shooting shotguns through teddy bears and shit. He's calling him Pops. He's a little, he's taking care of a little girl. Now she's all grown up, but she doesn't look like it. And just a whole bunch of fucking problems with this fucking movie. It looks cheap. It looks like a fan film, which should not be the case for a movie that cost over $155 million to make. There's no excuses for why this movie looks so cheap at moments. And yeah, it's just, there's really not much to like about this film. So I've listed all of those problems there. There's a fucking ton of them. The action sequences, for the most part, there's not very many of them. And when they are there, they're not impressive. There's nothing about, and even if they were somewhat decent, I wouldn't care, and I'd have no thrills, because I don't care about the characters, and the writing's so bad, I don't care about the story, so I don't care about what's going on. So all the film ends up being is an excuse for just expensive action and special effects, and I have no emotional investment in this film whatsoever. And that's a huge problem for me. If I don't have an emotional investment in the film I'm watching, then I can't, for the life of me, I can't enjoy it. Because I can't sit back and enjoy the film, because I don't care about what happens to anybody in the movie, and I don't care about what the story is. So it just makes all the action sequences just have no impact and just become completely flat and boring and dull. And it makes the whole movie dull because I don't care about the story and don't care about the characters. So I felt the film to actually be really boring. I thought it was slowly paced. I thought the action sequences, when they were there, they weren't impressive. You have a little bit of some shootout, like the little bit with the back of a van shooting a shotgun at the police car, which I've actually honestly seen done better in RoboCop 3, which I can't believe I'm saying that. But that scene was done better with the pink Cadillac and evil Steve Martin. It really was. It had more impact. At least the car got blown up. Here it was just very limp-wristed, limp-dicked, and just not much to it. Very weak. And then there's other few shoots, and a little bit of some shootouts and a little bit of gunplay, but very weak. You have the sequence on the bridge, which was very weak and very short, and it reminded me of the Lost World. And in Jurassic, it was done better in the Jurassic Park, The Lost World. So there's not much to this film that I can really say was really done well, and I already mentioned it earlier. It's just very handful. I can count on one hand the things I thought were done well in this film that I thought I actually did right, and there's just everything that it did wrong for me personally. It's just I can't even count on, if I even had two arms, I couldn't count them on both hands, on all the hands. I couldn't count them on four hands. I mean, that's how many problems I have with this movie. But just talking about it just irritates me. It just makes me visibly irritated. And there were moments in the film where I was watching it where it made me physically ill. Like my stomach was really feeling nauseous. And I swear to God, I almost felt like I was going to throw up. And just get violently ill and just puke all over the place. But thank God that's not what happened. But yeah, as you can see, I did not like this movie. I thought it was a very, very pathetic, piss poor excuse for a Terminator film. And I really don't want us to say about the film. It's rated out of 5 stars. I think it's every bit as bad as Jurassic World. Has the same problems I had with that movie. It's overlong. It has slow pacing. Its characters, for the most part, has one character I don't mind. This time it's Arnold as Pops and J.K. Simmons and a couple characters don't mind there. Jurassic World, I didn't mind Chris Pratt, but he didn't have much to do, and I didn't mind like the operating guy, who was kind of jokey or whatever behind the terminal. So I didn't mind that guy. I think it was Josh Johnson, the guy who was I don't know if that's his last name, but I know he was in Let's Be Cops, and I didn't mind him in that. But so I didn't mind him, but I didn't save the movie because I didn't like the fucking annoying kids, and I didn't like Bryce Dallas Howard. And the action sequences weren't much, and stuff with the dinosaurs wasn't that impressive, except for a little bit near the end. So it's the same fucking thing with Terminator Genisys. It's every bit as disappointing. But actually, I thought Jurassic World was actually a little bit more disappointing because I actually thought that might be better. This I had no hope for anyway, and it was just every bit as bad as I thought it was going to be, if not a little bit worse. And then it just has the same shitty characters I don't care for, the same story I don't really get involved with, and it doesn't interest me that much, and the same just uninspired, flat directing. I'm gonna get a paycheck. Just at least Colin Trevorrow, he did kind of do something a little bit more with some shots and some setups and camera techniques. This is definitely, I have to say, the directing job here is definitely worse than Jurassic World. But it's just hard for me to choose which film I like the least. But I ultimately would have to say at the time being, these are a tie for the worst film of the year, because they have the same crippling flaws that end up bringing the films to their knees, and they just fall apart after that. So anyway, yeah, I really don't know what to say about Terminator Genisys, except it was rated out of 5 stars. I give it 1 out of 5. It's a very poor effort for me personally. A very shitty, piss poor Terminator film. It's a terrible Terminator movie, and it's not a very good sequel because it just erases the first 2 films. And yeah, it's just and it features some of the worst performances I've seen acting-wise in a film this year. Emilia Clarke and Courtney are just some of the worst performances. These are like high school. Actually, honestly, high school play acting would be better than the performances that were given by Courtney and Emilia Clarke in Terminator Genisys. I mean, I'm going to say it again. They were both outacted by Arnold Schwarzenegger, playing a cyborg. That tells you how bad their performances were. But anyway, yeah, that was a very, very poor excuse for a movie. It was a bad Terminator film. It wasn't very entertaining. It's pretty shitty, and I really don't have anything else to say except it sucked. It sucked a ton of shits. And yeah. Thank you for watching my review / rant on Terminator Genisys, and I will see you guys later. See ya.